sato ma sadagamaya tamaso maham jyotirgamaya mrityormam amritam gamaya avir avir maedhi rudra yate dakshinam mukha te namaham pahinityam. Om, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness unto light. Lead us from death to immortality. Reach us through and through ourselves, and evermore protect us from ignorance by thy sweet, compassionate face. So my subject this morning is psychological Mayavada. And this is the third in a series of lectures on the doctrine of Maya, a cornerstone teaching of the Vedanta philosophy. In the first lecture, we talked about the metaphysics and the ontology of Maya as illusion. In the second lecture, we talked about the doctrine of Maya as a simple statement of facts. That we live in the world of duality and relativism, and that is the human predicament. And this morning we're going to be talking about Maya as a vidya, that is a spiritual ignorance. We're not talking about Maya as illusion, but as delusion, and how it corrupts our perception and our reason. Now let's begin with the fundamental, foundational teaching of the Vedanta philosophy. And that is that you are a divine, immortal soul. You're not the flesh and blood body that's born, grows old, and dies. And you're not the mind, like the lake of the mind with the waves of thought and feeling. And you're not the person that you think yourself to be. You're not the role that you play in the melodrama of life. And even your personality, your person, is just a megaphonic mask that we wear to relate to the world. In your true nature, you are the spirit. And the spirit is, by definition, unlimited. It's unlimited by time. It's immortal. It's unlimited by space. It's omnipresent. The spirit is, by definition, not physical. It's metaphysical. It's not personal, it's transpersonal. It's not psychological, it's transcendental. And as such, the spirit is infinite. This is your true nature. That is the self. In Sanskrit, it's called the Atman. The Atman is by nature infinite. That is your true self. And because there can only be one infinite, Therefore, you are defined by the Vedanta philosophy as one only without a second. That is, there's only one reality, and that is divinity, and that is your true nature. And because there is one only without a second, the one contains everything, and therefore you are by nature infinite and already perfect. Now, we cannot but have a positive affirmational response to this fundamental teaching of Vedanta. However, we know that in our own mind and heart, we don't feel infinite. We don't feel omnipresent. In fact, we feel very limited and identified with the body and the mind. And in fact, we have two selves. We're alienated from our true self. We're far distanced from our true nature. We're out of touch with reality. And we are jivas. That is, we are embodied souls. That's our condition. And we live subject to Mahamaya. We live subject to spiritual ignorance. Now, Mahamaya, as we're discussing this morning, avidya, is a power of God. It's a power of Ishvara. And avidya maya has two workings in our life. The first is that it veils our true nature. We don't know who we are in reality. And secondly, it creates this entire world of multiplicity, including our own body and mind. We're also, all that we identify with as our physical and psychological self is part of the world. But although we are, therefore, distanced from our true nature, and although our true nature is hidden from us, it can't be fully and completely hidden. It's like the sun behind a cloud in the sky. And although we can't see the sun directly, nevertheless, the sunlight floods everywhere and illumines the whole world and illumines all of the objects in the world. And all of the names and the forms are brightly sparkling with light, and they reflect the light, and it catches our attention. And we're drawn to the light. We're drawn to the lights of the big city. And we pursue that which we seek. We pursue in the reflected lights, completely unmindful of the heavenly source above. And this is Maya. Now, all human beings share universal values. They're universal, eternal values. They're shared by all human beings. Values such as truth, goodness, beauty, knowledge, love, freedom, peace, immortality. These are all eternal, universal entities. These are truths. These are realities. All of them exist above Plato's dividing line. There is a dividing line between the real and the unreal, between the higher and the lower. All of these values belong in the higher realm of being. They're eternal. They're universal. They're unchanging. They do not exist below the dividing line, that is, in the world of changing material names and forms. They do not exist in the mind as conceptual ideas. And yet, each one of us continues to grasp and to try to grasp and to apprehend and to secure these values that is, these eternal values, in this world of changing material things. And this is Maya. It's a futile attempt. All human beings, we're told in the Upanishads, well, we know that ordinarily, all human beings are born with the senses facing outwards. We open our eyes, our ears, what do we see? Well, we see and perceive the external world. And it's in the external world, therefore, that we look for what we are searching for. Once there was a Brahmin widow who, she was a seamstress. And she would spend her days sewing, seated by the window. And one day as she sat there, it grew late. And she was, the sun set. And it got darker and darker. And she tried, she couldn't see her sewing. And she dropped her sewing needle. What did she do? Well, she got up and she went over and she picked up her shawl and she went over to the door. She went, opened the front door, went down the stairs to the little lane, turned left, walked down the lane, turned left again, walked down the main street where there was a bright street light. And there around, under that street light, she began to look around. And as she was looking, a policeman came by that way. And he said, well, madam, can I help you? She said, yes, I've lost my sewing needle. Oh, really? Said the policeman. Well, let me help you. And so he looked around all under the lamp, got down on his hands and knees, looking. He couldn't find it anywhere. He said, are you sure that you lost it here? And she said, oh, no, I lost it back in my house. And he says, well, what are you looking for? Why are you looking for it here? He said, well, this is where the light is. That was her reasoning. And we may think, well, how foolish that was of this lady. But you see, this is our predicament. This is exactly our predicament. This is exactly what we're doing.
We're searching for that which we're looking for. Where are we looking for it? Right here in the world. This is where the light is. And this is Maya. Isn't this a bizarre situation? Isn't this amazing? Isn't this strange? Now let's think of another example. You remember all the famous Greek myth of Echo and Narcissus. And Narcissus was the son of a river god. And one day he was out hunting in the forest. And he spent the whole day hunting. He couldn't find any deer. And so tired and weary, he came upon a clearing in the forest, and there was a pond. And the pond was just very calm, placid, silvery surface. And all around the pond, there was a cool, grassy turf. And so he went over there and he kneeled down and he bent over the pond. He was going to get a drink of water. And as he looked in that water, what did he see? Well, he saw the reflection of a very wonderful face. Well, he just fell in love with that face. It was so attractive. That person in the pond. And he reached out his hand to grasp the hand that was reaching towards him. And immediately the water was disturbed and the image disappeared. And he was startled. What happened? And so he waited a few moments. Slowly the image returned. Oh, okay, so again he reached out. And again, he disturbed the water, not knowing what had happened there. The image disappeared, and again he felt disappointed. And like this, he tried again and again. And time passed, he became weary. And he called out to the forest. He said, "O ye forests, and O ye mountains, who is there more unfortunate than I? That which I love, I cannot touch. We're only separated by a little water, and yet it eludes me. Farewell, face that I have loved in vain." And then the echo came back from the mountains. In vain, in vain. So this is the old myth of Echo and Narcissus. Maybe you've seen the famous painting by W.C. Waterhouse, where we can see Narcissus kneeling by the pond and the look of frustration, the despair on his face. Now this is a story, this is a tragedy. This myth is a tragedy. It's a serious story, but it has a sad ending. And the tragedy is not, I give you a Vedantic interpretation. The tragedy is not that Narcissus is in love with himself. The tragedy is that Narcissus does not know that the reflection in the pond, that the face that he sees in the pond is himself. He thinks that it is something different from himself, something separate from himself. And this is Maya. This is delusion. Delusion is a false belief that causes suffering. And Narcissus, under this false belief, his hand is reaching out to grasp itself. And this is Maya. As you see, we're kind of walking around the subject here. I'm trying to give you some examples of the workings of avidya, Maya, in our own psychology. We're not talking this morning about metaphysics and ontology. And we're not talking here about the social and personal predicament that we find ourselves living in this world of duality and relativity. We're not talking about that this morning. This morning we're talking about avidya. How our spiritual nature is veiled from us and how it leads to behavior of a kind of a self-defeating behavior. Of the hand trying to grasp itself. Now let me give you a few more examples of the working of Maya in our own everyday psychology. I remember in my schoolboy days, I had a friend who collected baseball cards. And it gave him, as a hobby, gave him great enjoyment. And his goal was to collect one card for every player in the 12 leagues of the 12 teams of the American League. And it's only when I came to Vedanta that I never kind of understood why he could be, because he was interested in baseball, but it's only when I came to Vedanta I kind of understood the depth psychology behind it. You see, what we're doing here is if you take a circle and you just draw a circle, and that is, you define a set, and then you want to fill the set with everything that will make it complete, because that will give you a sense of completion. And if you can bring all the parts of the whole together, then you'll feel, it'll give you a sense of fulfillment. That's perfection. Perfection just means is that all of the cards are in the set. And that therefore you feel as if you've completed your task. Now you may say, well, why did the boy collect the baseball cards? You may say, well, obviously he collected them because he liked baseball. But as students of yoga psychology, Vedanta philosophy, we can understand that behind all of our simplest actions, there's a deeper spiritual motive. And so here we can see that maybe, I just suggest, that maybe here that we can see that the boy, in his own unconscious, symbolic, immature, and futile way, was trying to find in that those complete sets of cards an experience of the unity of his own being. And this is Maya. You may think that's far out, but that's my analysis. Let me give you another example. When I used to go to school, Berkeley, walking across campus, I used to see a couple, middle-aged men with a stack of books under their arm, hurrying to the classroom. And they were not professors, they were not instructors, they were students. They were perennial students. And they were enrolled in the university, but they weren't pursuing any course of program of study. It's just they kept taking classes. It seemed kind of like they enjoyed pursuing knowledge for its own sake. And I could never understand it as a student. But when I came to Vedanta, I began to appreciate it. I came to understand the deeper psychology behind it. Pursuing knowledge, the pursuit of knowledge for its own sake, that's a very high ideal. And after all, I think that we all share that ideal because this is the Vedanta society. That means this is the knowledge society. Our whole purpose here is the pursuit of knowledge. And we can understand why the students, those perennial students, found a deeper enjoyment. It's a kind of a state of spiritual state of bliss. They call it Medhananda. It's just an intellectual pleasure. But why does it give them happiness? Well, we can see knowledge removes ignorance. And knowledge is like light. Light removes darkness. Of course, it'll make us happy. We go into a room, we're stumbling around in the dark. It'll make us happy. We turn on the light. So that's understandable. This is the positive construction that we can put on it. This is the good news about the pursuit of knowledge. But the bad news is that there are two kinds of knowledge, the lower and the higher. And the Vedanta is all about the pursuit of the higher knowledge. That is direct, immediate, superconscious self-knowledge. And this kind of knowledge can never be gotten by conceptualization, that is, by grasping facts and understanding facts with our minds. It can never be attained by information processing or by academic coursework or by book learning. As Sri Ramakrishna says, the Farmer's Almanac predicts 10 inches of rain. But if you squeeze the almanac, you don't get out a single drop. That's the way it is. The lower knowledge and the higher knowledge. The lower knowledge is like the menu in the restaurant. The higher knowledge is like the food that's served to you by the waitress. You can't eat the menu, and no amount of studying of that menu and memorizing it will solve your hunger. The lower knowledge and the higher. The lower knowledge is like the map. The higher like the territory. The map is not the territory. And yet, often we confuse the two. And we pursue the lower knowledge at the expense of the higher. And this is Maya. We could say that avidya, Maya, we could define it as a lack of discrimination. You know the idea of discrimination, viveka. That's the very first prerequisite for success in spiritual life. Before we can get anywhere, before you even be qualified to study this Vedanta philosophy, we have to have some faculty, be able to discriminate the diamonds from the glass beads. And whether we're talking here about the good from the evil, or the moral from the immoral, or the true from the false, the real from the unreal, we have to have that, develop that capacity. So let me give you another example of the working of Maya. As we're talking and discussing it this morning, that is Maya, not as illusion. Maya as delusion, as avidya, as spiritual ignorance. And what does that mean in our everyday life? Let's take an example of an artist. Now, as you know, aesthetics is a very important branch of philosophy. 5 different branches in classical Greek philosophy. One of them is aesthetics. And the purpose of aesthetics is to make the abstract concrete. See, the problem with philosophy and metaphysics and epistemology is that it's very conceptual. And sometimes it's hard for us to wrap our brains around all of these abstract ideas. We need something to help us to grasp the ideas. And this is where art comes in. That is, by art we mean the fine arts, music, literature, painting, sculpture. The purpose of art is to make the abstract concrete, to make that which is conceptual perceptual, so that we can see it. That is, we can as our philosophy, to put our philosophy in a form that we can see it, that we can feel it, we can hear it, we can touch it, and we can perceive it, and thus we can relate to it emotionally. That's the purpose. Now, all art, whenever we see a great work of art, an artifact, whatever it be, we appreciate it because we apprehend certain universal objective principles are reflected in that artifact. And that is things like harmony, unity, balance, unity and diversity, goodness. All great works of art are about something that's good. And all works of art are about truth. So it's these principles that we apprehend as the beauty in the artifact. But as you notice, all of these principles are, they have their They inhabit the world, the higher world, above Plato's dividing line. They're all these things, these entities, these truths all exist in a higher world. They don't actually exist in the world of our perception. That is the world of the five elements, the world of name and form. They exist in the same place as our soul and ourself. And this is why Swami Vivekananda, on his return to the Western world in 1899, he was on the ship Golconda. He was passing through the Mediterranean Sea between the island of Sardinia and Italy. And there were cliffs there in a place called Messina. The big, tall cliffs, and the moon had risen, and all the passengers were marveling at the beauty of the moonlight reflected on the cliffs. They're saying, oh, how beautiful that is. And Swami Vivekananda remarked there to a friend and disciple. He said, yes, but Messina must thank me, because it is I who give her her beauty. And well, Swami Vivekananda was speaking from a very high platform of thought. That is, he knew that all the beauty in the world is but a reflection of your own spirit. And so in that heightened mood, he spoke. But it reminds us, the incident reminds us, that it's true that all artifacts, that is works of art, are representations. And the key word there is representations. That is, the beauty is not in the thing in itself. We're not seeing the thing in itself. We're seeing a reflection of the thing in itself. And this is why aesthetics can never give us salvation. Because we need to apprehend the thing in itself. The real object of our knowledge. Let's say, for example, that you have a painter, an artist paints a picture, and he hangs it in a gallery, and people come walking by and they look at that painting, and some person stops and says, oh, well, how beautiful that is. What a beautiful painting that is. Now, do you think that that person is likely to just sit down and to contemplate the painting with detachment, with a kind of aesthetic distance? No, probably not. Probably if they're anything like ourselves, we would think, what a beautiful painting. I would like to own it. I'd like to buy it. How much is it? That is, the admirer wants to possess it. And that's because he has confused, there is a confusion and a conflation between the reflection in the mirror, the reflected face in the mirror, and the original face. And this is Maya. So, well, this was our subject this morning. A cornerstone teaching of the Vedanta philosophy. This doctrine of Maya. This morning we talked only about one of the aspects of the doctrine. We're talking about avidya. And I gave you 5 different examples. I gave you the example of the Brahmin widow and Narcissus and the student. And that student kind of is in my mind. That's not the student, but that boy who collected the cards. I don't know why I keep thinking about him. I think about that stack of cards that he had. Maybe a better example would be, rather than the cards, because that's just a personal example. Maybe a better example would be a house of cards. Just think of the ego as a house of cards. And think of every card as kind of an experience that we've had. I think a success, a failure, something that we've had that's molded and shaped our self-image. All those images together, if we were to put them those cards, have each one of an image of our experiences, we could make a collage. And that collage would be our self-image. And there we are. That's the structure of ourself. How long we have taken to build that structure of ourself. And yet how precarious and unstable it is. Because the slightest contradiction of our worldview, the slightest criticism of our ego self is enough to topple the whole house of cards. And yet, as divine immortal souls, we fully identify with our ego self and assume all of the liabilities of the house of cards. And this is Maya. So that's the example we gave. We gave you Narcissus, then we gave the boy, and then we gave the student, the perennial student, and then we gave the example of the artist. All of these people are just ordinary people, like ourselves. They're living their ordinary lives, behaving in an ordinary fashion, and yet subject to avidya maya, subject to spiritual ignorance, not knowing their true nature, acting accordingly, and as a result of that avidya, it has its workings in our psychology. It corrupts our perception and our reason. It leads us far away from causes us to lose sight of the meaning and purpose of our life, and it is the root cause of our suffering. And the goal of spiritual life is to become free from avidya. Free from spiritual ignorance. Our goal is to transcend, go beyond Maya by realizing and by knowing our true self. Swami, do we have an announcement?
So wishing you a happy new year. If you'd like to bring the new year in with a nice spiritual vibration, come and meditate with us at about 11:30 to 12, and then we'll do an arati, and then we'll have some refreshments after that. Next Sunday, we'll be celebrating Holy Mother's Puja, so that starts at 10, and we do a homa fire and have prasad, devotional singing, and the Swamis will give us some talks, and then we have the special arati in the evening. And then the Sunday after that, Swami Sarvadevananda will be talking about Holy Mother in the eyes of the Swamis Saradananda and Turiyananda. And the weekday classes continue as usual. So tomorrow is Kalpataru Day, and we'll be doing a reading after the arati regarding the Kalpataru Day. And are you going to see people for questions and answers?
Yeah.
All right, in the greenhouse living room. I'm going to close with a chant.
Yeah, please join us for some question, answer, or pushback, or disagreement in the green room immediately afterwards. Om Dyo Shantihi Antariksha Ham Shantihi Prithivi Shantihi Apa Shantihi Oshadaya Shantihi Vanaspataya Shantihi Vishwe Deva Shantihi Brahma Shantihi Saravam Shantihi Shantireva Shantihi Same Shantiredhi Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Om. Peace is in heaven, peace is on the earth, peace is in the sky and in the waters. The herbs and plants and trees are full of peace. The gods are peaceful. May this eternal universal peace enter our souls and beings. Om. Peace, peace, peace be unto us all.